Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to True Courtroom Stories. This is episode 83, and our research today comes from Mr. Zahir Ahmed Mir. Before we dive in, please do subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to like this explainer and share it with your friends. Now, have you ever stopped to think about where our right to privacy actually comes from? We tend to think it's a pretty modern idea, something cooked up in recent court cases. But what if I told you that a huge legal principle, one that's at the heart of surveillance law today, was laid down by a judge way back in medieval Spain? It's a story that connects two worlds you would never ever expect to be linked.
It really does sound like the beginning of a bad joke, doesn't it? A medieval judge and the FBI. What could they possibly have in common? Well, the connection is no joke at all. In fact, it gets right to the core of one of our most important rights, the right to be left alone. And honestly, digging into this link might just change the way you think about our modern legal protections. So let's get into it. Okay, so for our story, we need to travel back in time. Way, way back, to the 10th century, to the city of Córdoba. And you can just forget everything you've heard about the Dark Ages because this place was the opposite of dark. It was a shining light for the whole world, a center for culture, science, and law. We're talking massive libraries, famous universities, and incredibly sophisticated courts. It's in this brilliant, enlightened city that our legal drama kicks off. So right in the middle of this bustling city, the authorities get a tip. There's a guy who's suspected of doing something he shouldn't be, brewing alcohol in his own home, which was prohibited. Now, for the state, this seems pretty straightforward, right? The law is the law. They just need to enforce it. The only problem, they need proof.
And this is where things get really interesting. The police think they know who their guy is, but they don't have that crucial piece of evidence. So what do? They decide to take matters into their own hands. Without any permission, without anything like a warrant, they literally climb over the wall of his private home. They break into his property because they're determined to catch him.
And you know what? Their plan worked perfectly. The second they got inside, they saw it all. The man was caught red-handed right in the middle of his illegal operation. For the police, this was a huge win. They had their suspect, they had the physical evidence, everything they needed. You'd think, that's it, game over, an open and shut case. But what happens next is what makes this story absolutely incredible.
The police bring their case before a famous and respected judge named Ibn Hazm. The prosecution lays it all out. It seems like a complete slam dunk. They have the man, the proof, a conviction looks like a sure thing. But then the judge does something that must have sent a shockwave through the courtroom. He dismisses the case. He throws the entire thing out.
So why would he do that? The man was obviously guilty. Well, Judge Ibn Hazm's logic was totally revolutionary. He wasn't focused on the man's crime, he was focused on the government's crime. He ruled that the evidence couldn't be used. Why? Because it was obtained by breaking the law. The police committed a legal entry and a serious invasion of privacy. He even pointed to established laws that forbid spying and entering a home without permission. For the judge, there was a much, much bigger principle at stake here. And this leads us to the judge's powerful, timeless ruling. He said, if you violate his privacy to expose a sin, you commit a greater sin than him. Just let that sink in for a minute. He's weighing two wrongs here. On one side, you have a guy making alcohol. On the other side, you have the state, the very people who are supposed to uphold the law, breaking into someone's home. And for Judge Ibn Hazm, the state crossing that line was way more dangerous for society. He was saying the ends don't justify the means.
He made this an official part of his legal writings, stating that privacy is inviolable. It's sacred. It's not something you can just ignore because it's convenient. He drew a clear line in the sand. The government cannot just barge into a person's home. It needs one of two things: consent from the citizen or a clear, lawful reason to be there. He was essentially building a legal wall around every person's home, protecting them from the power of the state.
Okay, so keep that idea in your head, this idea of an inviolable wall. Because now we are going to take a massive leap through time. We're leaving 10th century Córdoba, and we're jumping forward 900 years, all the way across the Atlantic to the United States in the 20th century. The world has changed, the technology is completely different, but as you're about to see, the core question about privacy, it's exactly the same. The connection here is just amazing. Back in 10th century Spain, the police crossed a physical brick-and-mortar wall. Now, fast forward to the US in the 1960s. The FBI isn't climbing a stone wall, no, but they are tapping a public phone booth to listen to a private call. They were crossing a virtual wall, the basic human expectation that your conversation is private.
This brings us to a huge landmark case from 1967, Katz versus the United States. And the facts are pretty simple. A man named Charles Katz was using a public phone booth to place illegal gambling bets.
The FBI suspected him, so they put a bug on the outside of the phone booth and recorded everything he said. And just like in Córdoba, they got their evidence. And just like in Córdoba, they did it without a warrant, without any lawful cause. The case went all the way to the top, to the Supreme Court. And their ruling was a bombshell. The court sided with cats. They said what the FBI did was unconstitutional. And in doing so, they set some really important rules. First, just like Judge Ibn Hazm wanted a lawful cause, the court said the government needs a warrant. Second, and this was a huge deal, they said privacy protects people, not just places. And third, a judge has to sign off on it. The government can't just decide to spy on people on its own.
So what is this reasonable expectation of privacy they talked about? It's a really simple but powerful idea. Your right to privacy follows you. When Katz went into that phone booth and closed the door, he had a reasonable expectation that his call was private. He created a little temporary private zone for himself. By listening in, the FBI shattered that expectation. This completely changed the game because it shifted the focus from protecting property to protecting people.
And this, right here, is where it all comes together. Just look at this. The parallels are just stunning. On the issue of evidence, Ibn Hazm says illegally obtained evidence is inadmissible. The Supreme Court says warrantless surveillance is unconstitutional. It's the exact same idea. On space, Ibn Hazm says a home is a sacred, private space. The Supreme Court takes that idea and expands it, saying privacy protects people, not just places. And on authority, Ibn Hazm demanded lawful cause. The Supreme Court defined that lawful cause as a warrant signed by a judge. Two different cultures, 9 centuries apart, and they both landed on the same fundamental truth. It's incredible.
And all of this brings us right back to today. The wisdom from a medieval judge and a 1960s court case has never been more important. Our walls today aren't just physical anymore, are they? They're digital. Our private lives are on our phones, our smart speakers are always listening.
Think of it as a sanctuary, right? A private space protected by locks and walls. But what gives those walls their real strength? We're going to explore the legal and moral foundations of privacy in the home, a fundamental right that, as you'll see, shapes the very nature of justice itself. I want you to really think about that for a second. When you close your front door at the end of the day, what is it that truly gives you that sense of security, that feeling of peace? What turns a simple structure of bricks and mortar into your personal sanctuary, a place where you can finally be yourself, completely away from the prying eyes of the world? It's a feeling we all know, we all need. But here's the thing, that feeling, it isn't just an emotion. In Pakistan, it's a right that's actually written into the law.
And that right there is the crucial point we really need to grasp. The protection we're talking about, it goes so much further than a simple lock on the door or a fence around the yard. We are talking about an invisible yet incredibly powerful legal shield. It's a constitutional guarantee that recognizes your home not just as a piece of property, but as a domain of your personal liberty and your dignity. It's a place where the state can't just barge in whenever it feels like it.
Okay, so let's dive into this legal shield. Where does it actually come from? Well, the specific provision that stands guard over your private life is Article 14 of the Constitution of Pakistan. Now, this isn't just some dusty, obscure legal text that nobody reads. No, it is a powerful, clear declaration about the relationship between you, the citizen, and the state. It draws a very clear line in the sand, establishing a boundary that is absolutely meant to be respected. Now, look at the language here. It's so important to break this down. It links the dignity of man and the privacy of the home together. See that? The Constitution is literally telling us that invading someone's home is a direct assault on their personal dignity. And that word inviolable, it means it cannot be violated. It's sacred. But, and this is key, notice that little phrase, subject to law. This means the right isn't absolute. The state can step in, but, and only when it has clear, lawful authority to do so, like a proper, valid warrant. This article is the absolute bedrock of our defense against the arbitrary use of state power.
So, a right written on a piece of paper is one thing, but how does it actually hold up in the real world when things get messy? Well, the true strength of Article 14 has really been forged in the fire of the courtroom. Over many years, courageous people have brought forward landmark cases to challenge state overreach, and that has forced the courts to define and to defend the boundaries of this fundamental right.
And this has been a long fight. Look, as far back as 1988, in the landmark case of Benazir Bhutto versus the state, the Supreme Court laid down these foundational principles, basically saying that privacy is absolutely essential for a democratic society. Now, let's fast forward to 2021.
The threat, it's evolved, hasn't it? We're now dealing with sophisticated electronic surveillance, phone tapping, the whole 9 yards. And yet, the courts have consistently adapted, reaffirming that the core principles of Article 14 apply just as forcefully to a digital intrusion as they do to a physical one. It just goes to show you, there's a consistent judicial commitment to protecting this right decade after decade.
So what does all this mean? After all those legal battles, what's the one single takeaway? The core principle that rings through all of these cases is unwavering, and it is this. The state operates under the law, not above it. Any invasion of your privacy, and it doesn't matter if it's breaking down your door or secretly listening to your calls, is illegal unless it is explicitly justified by law. That, my friends, is the very essence of the rule of law.
But let's ask a deeper question. Why? Why is this right to privacy so fiercely protected? Why is it considered so incredibly essential? Well, the courts have argued that it's not just a matter of, personal comfort or wanting to be left alone. No, it goes much, much deeper than that. The right to privacy is fundamentally tangled up with the very idea of justice itself. The argument is, you simply cannot have one without the other.
This is such a powerful statement from the judiciary, and it really gets to the heart of the matter. It's telling us that justice and privacy are two sides of the very same coin. Think about it. True justice requires a fair process, right? It requires the ability for people to think freely, to talk to each other without fear, and to feel secure in their own homes. Without that foundation of privacy, the whole system of justice just crumbles. A state that can spy on its citizens whenever it wants can also accuse them whenever it wants.
This really paints a clear picture of the two paths a society can go down. In a world without privacy, a chilling effect starts to set in. People become afraid to speak their minds. They get scared to associate with certain people or to challenge authority. Fear and suspicion start to replace trust, not just between people and the state, but between people themselves. But when you flip that, when privacy is protected, it allows human dignity to truly flourish. It creates the breathing room for freedom of thought and expression, and those are the essential ingredients for a society where justice can actually be served.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here. The source material from Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir argues that this is about way more than just individual rights or some dry legal procedures. How a nation treats the privacy of the home is a direct reflection of that nation's moral character. It is a test of its commitment to its own deepest values. Just let that sink in for a moment, the profound meaning behind that statement. When the state, the very entity that is supposed to protect its people, becomes the one that violates their most sacred spaces without a lawful reason, it just shatters the trust between the government and the governed. It sends a chilling message that power, not principle, is what really matters. And that act of intrusion, it doesn't just harm one individual family. It eats away at the moral fabric of the entire nation, creating a society built on fear instead of one built on mutual respect and trust.
All right, so we've covered a lot. Let's quickly summarize the key takeaways from all of this. First, remember that privacy, especially the privacy of your home, it isn't just a nice idea, it's a constitutional shield under Article 14. Second, Pakistan's courts have a long, strong history of defending this right against state power, whether it's physical or digital. Third, and this is maybe the most crucial point, justice simply cannot exist in a society that doesn't value privacy. They are completely linked. And finally, respecting these sacred walls isn't just a legal duty, it's a moral imperative for the health of the entire nation.
And that leaves us right here with a critical question for our time. You see, the whole principle of the sacred wall was established when the biggest threat was a physical door being broken down. But today, our walls are digital, aren't they? Our most private lives exist on our phones and our messages on our computers. So the question for all of us is this: how do we apply this timeless constitutional principle to the borderless threats of the 21st century? How do we make sure our digital homes